The global challenges of poverty, of food security, and of gender equality are not going to be effectively addressed unless we get land rights right. See, 3/4 of the world's poorest people live in rural areas where land is the most important asset. It's a primary source of food, income, wealth, status, power, credit. And unfortunately, only 30% of the world's land is formally documented, only 10% in Africa. And more than 1 billion rural poor women and men who rely on land for their livelihoods lack secure legal rights to that land. And without secure documented rights, poor rural families typically lack the incentive to invest for the future. They lack adequate shelter, they suffer from food insecurity, they lack optimal access to credit and to government services. And women fare the worst. While providing much of the farm labor in the global south, women rarely own land. So the problem directly impacts those marginalized people, but it also drags down broader progress in the countries where landlessness and weak land rights are most prevalent. At the societal level, landlessness and weak land rights are associated with much higher levels of conflict, greater environmental degradation, and lower growth rates. Yet studies demonstrate that providing secure land rights results in more investment, higher incomes, wealth, higher food production, better land stewardship, and faster, more inclusive growth. And when women share in those rights, even more good things happen. Income and food production goes up even more. Children are better nourished and better educated, and domestic violence goes down. So, why has the problem persisted? In short, because many governments have not developed and implemented the basic legal and institutional frameworks needed to ensure broad-based and secure rights to land, and because this problem does not get enough attention on the global agenda from other global development actors. But solutions do exist. My organization, Landessa, has used a system change model at the country level. And in country by country, we have worked with governments to help change and implement laws that provide secure legal rights to poor women, men, and communities. Landessa's country level work involves three things. First, we try to increase a government's willingness to act by reframing the value proposition for reform. Second, Landessa provides the often missing legal and policy expertise to help develop needed changes in policy and law. And finally, in places where lack of implementation is the key constraint, we help governments design and implement scalable pilots and train government officials. Landessa's country-level work with governments has been our core approach. And over the years, we've partnered with governments on reforms that have provided secure legal rights to more than 130 million families. Now that's solid progress, but there's so much more to be done because more than 1 billion rural poor still need land rights. So a few years ago, realizing the challenges of scaling the organization to operate simultaneously in scores of countries, we realized that in order to broaden impact, we needed to go beyond our country-by-country approach. And we started another line of work we call global advocacy to elevate land rights on the global agenda and to prompt other global development actors to focus more on land rights. Initially, we focused our global advocacy efforts on getting land rights integrated into the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We led a broad coalition that successfully positioned land rights within 3 of the 17 goals. Going forward, we see 2 options for our ongoing global advocacy efforts. There is a UN option of continuing to work with the UN and its member states to leverage land rights within the goals, and there's an NGO option. And the NGO option involves working with NGOs and their donors to add a land rights lens to already existing efforts on food security, on agricultural development, on housing, on climate change, on conflict, in order to accelerate those already existing efforts. Now, with limited global advocacy resources and capacity going forward, we're faced with this important strategic question. Do we focus the majority of our global advocacy efforts on the UN option, helping to leverage the rights within the SDGs? Or do we focus more on NGOs and their donors to get them to add a land rights lens to their existing efforts? That's the question I'm hoping you will help us work through in this workshop session. Thank you.